Finally, after almost a year, my journey with the GRC Cars diecast line comes to an end as we take a look at the final racer I have to add to my collection, Raoul. And what a fitting racer to end on, as the GRC name was actually inspired by a logo that Raoul has on himself in Cars 2 and all of his other appearances. Now, in universe, the GRC on Raoul is not the same as this GRC. This stands for, I think, Grand Rally Championship or something along those lines. But for the GRC diecast line, they cleverly reused this logo on Raoul. They did give it a different meaning, now Global Racers Cup, but still, I think it is pretty clever synergy. If you look at concept art that's been released for the GRC, it was actually originally called the GXC, Global Extreme Cup, kind of closer in concept to the XRS, but it seems they later on changed it to GRC, I guess to be a better match for Raoul. And yeah, I know the acronyms aren't the same, but I just think that's a cool bit of world building and a cool bit of connection. It is kind of weird then that the GRC didn't really focus on Raoul much in the marketing. A lot of the marketing was like, look, it's a big rematch between McQueen and Francesco. There wasn't much Raoul, which I think is a shame, because not only is he one of my favorite World Grand Prix racers, I think it's also just kind of fitting. This, of course, is the 2-pack of him and Miguel Camino, released in 2025. I picked this up all the way back in, I want to say, like February, and I didn't review it at the time because I had just reviewed the Miguel Camino and Jackson Storm 2-pack like 2 weeks earlier, and yeah, I didn't want to be immediately reviewing Miguel again. I intended to review it soon after, but then it just got lost in the shuffle of all the other reviews I had to do, and recently it finally won a poll to be my next review, so now it's finally time to take a look at Raoul and Miguel, who I already have and I've already reviewed. But hey, Miguel Camino is not a car you get duplicates of often. I could probably make a super cool European racer custom with this. I know all the comments are probably going to say Fernando Alonso. I will probably try to do that. Now, I will say, the funny thing about this is that I picked this up in February, and that was before we knew that all the GRCs were coming back for 2025, so that's why I picked up this 2-pack. Since then, I've seen Raoul's single many, many times, and I regretted getting this 2-pack, but hey, back when I bought it, I had no idea. Anyway, guys, welcome back to another review, and to another 2025 Cars Diecast review. Today, we're going to be taking a look at GRC, Raoul Çaroule, and Miguel Camino, mainly Raoul, but a bit of a glance at Miguel as well. We've got this nice artwork of the two of them, a lot more natural to see the two of them together compared to the last time we reviewed Miguel, where he was in a 2-pack with Jackson Storm, which is still so crazy to wrap my head around. They are racers 6 and 5 respectively. GRC Global Racers Cup logo up there for probably the final time on my channel. Here's a nice look at that wonderful GRC card back with the hexagon pattern down here and all these nice details. You know, it sure is convenient that the World Grand Prix racers were numbered 1 through 11, except for the ones based on real people. And even Lewis was number 2. I just always found that kind of funny. Like, isn't that a great coincidence? On the back of the package, you can see the two packs for GRC out this year with McQueen and Shu, reissue from last year, and Miguel and Raoul as well. Now let's take this guy out of the package, or I guess these guys. In case you're wondering why the background is so different, I'm on vacation right now in Boston, so this is your wonderful view of Boston. Look at that. Ooh, construction, giant crane, airplane in the background, building, YMCA. There's a YMCA back here. Did we know there was a YMCA? So YMCA, wow. I'm sorry if I'm horrendously backlit throughout this entire review. I was gonna film it somewhere else in the room, but it's like, no, I gotta give him a good view. So there you go. All right, so here we've got Miguel and Raoul out of the package, and man, lighting like this and background like this reminds me just how good my camera is. I really need a better review setup back at home that better showcases them. I should at the very least get that white shelf repainted. Anyway, we're going to start off by taking a look at Miguel here. Again, I have already reviewed him, but as far as GRC items go, he started off being one of the ones that I really didn't like all that much, other than a few things. Probably the most well-known aspect of GRC Miguel Camino is the fact that they fixed the 2 major errors his original diecast has, the fact that his windows are painted over on the original, and the fact that his spoiler is red instead of black. And the fact that this Miguel simply corrects those 2 mistakes that the original one has had since 2011 really won a lot of people over to him. While I appreciated the fact that, you know, they fixed him up, I wasn't really the biggest fan of GRC Miguel until I reviewed him, just because it's one of the GRC cars that doesn't look all that different from the original. But when I finished reviewing him a few months back, I decided, you know what, I think he is different enough to warrant me saying that, you know, I think it's a pretty good variant. The standout really is those corrections to that old error, but he does look pretty nice. I think for a car as elaborate as Miguel, what kind of bugged me was just how blank his sides are. This side is blank, the other side is blank, which is unfortunate, especially because the original Miguel Camino is one of very few racers out there that has asymmetrical patterns, and I wish they'd kept that, especially in a line as out there and asymmetrical as the GRC. Like GRC McQueen is crazily asymmetrical. They did some really wacky stuff with him, and I was hoping they'd do that for Miguel too, but he does have a bit of a more basic design. But yeah, no, I think it combines the GRC elements and colors and hexagon patterns and all that with the original Miguel design well. I was just hoping for something a little more Miguel, I guess, a little more unique to him. There is a look at the back, there's a look at the other side, and there is the base. Again, if you want a more in-depth look at this guy, I'd recommend checking out my review from a few months back. Now, on to our main event here. It's time for Raoul. So Raoul back in the day was my all-time favorite World Grand Prix racer, and while he doesn't hold that title anymore, he's always held a special place in my heart. He's probably he's probably the World Grand Prix racer that I have the most variants of, I think maybe other than Nigel Gearsley. And his GRC variant does something that a lot of them do very well, I think, which is just kind of modernizing and updating the design. It's a very, I don't know, there's some very interesting stuff going on with the GRC, where what they do kind of does, like, it really just kind of modernizes and updates the designs. The original Raoul has this very kind of paint splatter design with the French flag. The GRC one replaces that with these very strong lines and shapes and stuff. Like, this feels like it was painted. This feels like it was done in an Adobe app. But it's not like the next gens where the uniformness and the modernization makes them look bad. I think in the case of the GRC, it provides this really interesting, not only visual update, but just change. You have this more kind of streamlined Raoul versus the original. And while I definitely do prefer the original and that more hand-done, hand-painted look, the GRC just brings something kind of different to the table that I think makes it really unique. I really, really love what they're doing with all these lines here. Look at that line work, all these different lines and shapes and angles all over the top. There's not much of a pattern to it, which I really love. I really appreciate that they just kind of went random with it, and it works. It genuinely really works. I love the red stripe and the white stripe. Raoul is one of those characters where if you look across his variants, there are very few with substantial changes to his design. And, you know, a lot of the GRC cars, like Miguel and Carla, don't have substantial changes. I'm glad that they found a way to give Raoul substantial changes, like how the Francesco GRC kind of makes his colors go this way instead of this way. They do something kind of similar with Raoul here, having, yes, still that classic Raoul design, albeit redesigned with these sharper angles and lines and everything. Look, they even changed the color of his rear view mirror. But yeah, they also had it go down this way, which I think is super cool. You also have the GRC logo stretching all the way across the hood, and of course the hexagons. His hexagons start very, very early on in the design and carry out all the way throughout. Of course, something featured on every single GRC item. I love his wheels being redone in white. The recolored wheels for both this line and Race and Rescue, I'm not always the biggest fan of, but I do really like how that looks. His secondary sponsors fit in just fine here. Ride, Revenue, Ravioli, and Petrola. Of course, they'll share the same secondary sponsors as Francesco does in this line. GRC written there, just like the GRC on the original, although it is using, of course, this GRC font and not the original, not the same GRC. I do like that the white stripe is at kind of a lower angle. It's also, you've also got the red stripes continuing above the white stripe and another white stripe here. Again, I love just kind of the random abstractness. It fits with Raoul so well. I was talking earlier about how the original Raoul has this kind of hand-painted look. This is hand-painted. This is abstract art. And I just think that's really, really cool. You got the GRC logo there on the back. There are so many little details. I wish I could point out every single little red and white stripe and how they intersect, because I think they all work together so well. But if I did that, I'd be here all day and you'd all get bored. I once did a review of Miss Fritter where I read off every single street sign on her side. And this was several years ago, and like nobody watched it. I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that again. Isn't that right? Pops. Okay, got the GRC logo on the back there. There is a look at the other side. I'm gonna assume, does he have an asymmetrical design? No, he doesn't. Oh, that's honestly kind of interesting. I kind of wish they'd have done that. But finally, there is a look at the base. As far as the GRCs go, I don't know if I'd call Raoul my favorite. I don't think he is. I think there are several cars that I like more than him. I think I'd put him more towards the middle, but I think what they did with him is really cool and clever and unique and just different. And that's what the GRC line did so well. It took these classic characters from Cars 2 that we've seen variants of over and over and over again, and it redesigned them in these really unique, modern ways that just work really well. Now that I've reviewed the whole line, I can confidently say I appreciate what it was trying to do, and I think it did it really well, making a brand new modernized World Grand Prix line with designs unlike anything we'd ever seen for the characters, designs that really go above and beyond. I really appreciate what they were doing. It's a shame the rest of the World Grand Prix racers ended up not being in this line with those Walmart listings. It seems they were planned and just it didn't end up happening. But hey, I'll take what we could get because the GRC ended up being pretty great. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think about these items and the GRC as a whole in the comments, because some time has passed now since they came out. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.